I'm Tanya, 34 years old, a marketing executive from Chicago who's always been the responsible daughter. For years, I've financially supported my family despite their dismissive attitude toward my achievements. When my dad texted, "Come early, we'll celebrate you," I felt a surge of hope that they finally appreciated me. I spent hours getting ready excited for my early birthday celebration. But when I arrived at the restaurant, the waiter handed me a name tag that read, "Limited Guest." Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt invisible in your own family. Growing up as the middle child between my older sister Melanie and younger brother Jason was like existing in a constant shadow. Melanie, now 38, was always our parents' golden child. Everything she did was extraordinary in their eyes. Her average grades were celebrated with expensive gifts, while my straight A's were met with distracted nods. "That's nice, Tanya," my mom would say before quickly turning the conversation back to Melanie's latest accomplishment. Then there was Jason, 29, the baby of the family. Being 7 years younger than me meant he grew up with different rules. The strict curfews and limited allowance that defined my teenage years somehow didn't apply to him. When he broke curfew, Mom would say, "He's just being a boy." When I pointed out the double standard, Dad would dismiss me with, "You're more responsible. You can handle stricter rules." My parents, Frank and Diana Stevens, never hid their favoritism. Family photos told the story clearly. Dad holding Melanie on his shoulders at Disneyland. Mom hugging Jason at his high school graduation. Me often slightly off-center or partially cropped out. The Christmas when I was 12, Melanie received a new computer for showing interest in technology. I had been coding simple games for months, but received a generic sweater. Despite the obvious favoritism, I excelled academically. I graduated at the top of my class in high school, earned a full scholarship to Northwestern University, and completed my MBA with honors. Each milestone was acknowledged with polite congratulations from my parents, always followed by, "Did you hear Melanie got a promotion at the bank?" Or "Jason is thinking about taking a photography class." My career in marketing took off quickly. I started as an assistant at a small agency and worked my way up through increasingly prestigious firms. Last year, I was promoted to Vice President of Digital Strategy at one of Chicago's most respected marketing firms. My salary tripled from where I'd started just 8 years ago. I now managed a team of 20 people and handled multi-million-dollar accounts for international brands. Yet my family remained unimpressed. When I called to share the news of my promotion, Mom answered with, "That's nice, honey. Can you talk to your father about the mortgage payment? We're a little short this month." That had become our family dynamic. I was the financial support system, not the daughter worthy of celebration. I paid for Jason's college tuition when my parents claimed they couldn't afford it. I covered the down payment on their new car last year. Most significantly, I'd been making their mortgage payments for the past 3 years after Dad lost his job and took a lower-paying position. Recently, I'd been working with a therapist to establish healthier boundaries. Your worth isn't determined by how much you give. Dr. Patricia reminded me in our last session. It's okay to expect appreciation and respect in return. I was trying to implement her advice gradually. I declined to pay for Jason's spontaneous trip to Europe last month. I suggested my parents refinance their mortgage to a more affordable payment. Small steps toward reclaiming my financial independence. Then last week, I received a text from Dad that made my heart leap. "We want to celebrate you, Tanya. Come to Giovanni's on Friday at 7. Come early so we can have some special time together before dinner." Giovanni's was an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, far more expensive than anywhere my family normally dined. I read the message several times, wondering if it was meant for someone else. But there was my name and the specific invitation. I called my assistant and rescheduled 2 important meetings to take Friday afternoon off. I went shopping and bought a new navy blue dress that cost $400 more than I'd ever spent on a single item of clothing. I had my hair styled professionally and even splurged on a manicure. I bought my parents a thank you gift, a crystal frame with a family photo from last Christmas. The one photo where I wasn't awkwardly positioned at the edge. Friday afternoon, I left work early, heart pounding with anticipation. As I drove to the restaurant, I allowed myself to imagine that things were changing. Maybe my recent boundary setting had helped them realize how much they'd taken me for granted. Maybe they'd finally noticed my achievements. Maybe, just maybe, I would finally feel like an equal member of the family instead of the personal bank they occasionally acknowledged. Tonight will be different, I told myself, as I pulled into the restaurant parking lot, noticing it was unusually full for an early dinner reservation. Tonight I'm finally being celebrated. I parked my car in one of the few remaining spots at the far end of Giovanni's parking lot. The abundance of vehicles seemed strange for 6:30 on a Friday, but I figured there might be a corporate event in one of the private dining rooms. The restaurant was known for hosting business functions for Chicago's elite companies. Walking toward the entrance in my new heels, I felt a flutter of nervousness mixed with excitement. I had mentally rehearsed this moment all day, imagining my parents waiting at a table, perhaps with a small wrapped gift, finally ready to acknowledge my contributions and accomplishments. The hostess greeted me with a polite smile when I entered the elegant lobby with its marble floors and crystal chandelier. "Good evening, ma'am. Do you have a reservation?" "I'm meeting my family. The reservation should be under Stevens." She scanned her tablet, brow furrowed slightly. "Stevens. Ah, yes, the Stevens party. They're in our grand ballroom tonight." She looked at me more carefully. "Are you on the guest list?" "Guest list. For a family dinner, I'm Tanya Stevens. My father specifically invited me." She checked her tablet again. "Yes, here you are." She reached under the counter and pulled out a name tag. "All guests are required to wear these tonight." She handed me a cream-colored name tag with my name printed in elegant script, but beneath it in smaller letters were the words, "Limited Guest." "What does limited guest mean?" I asked, confusion, replacing my earlier excitement. "I'm not sure. The event organizers provided the badges." She gestured toward the hallway leading to the ballroom. "The grand ballroom is at the end of this corridor." As I walked down the hallway studying the strange badge, I noticed someone standing near a potted palm phone in hand. It was my sister Melanie, looking stunning in a red dress that probably cost twice what mine did. Her name tag read Melanie Stevens with full access guest printed below. "Melanie, what's going on, Dad? Invited me for dinner, but this whole setup seems strange." She looked up surprised to see me. Her eyes darted to my name tag, and something like pity flashed across her face. "Oh, Tanya, you actually came." She leaned closer and whispered, "That badge means no food." No food? At a dinner I was specifically invited to, my confusion was rapidly transforming into humiliation. "Mom and Dad didn't think you'd actually show up," she said, checking her reflection in her phone camera. "They just wanted to make sure you brought your gift." "Gift? What gift?" "For me, of course." She smiled brightly. "Didn't they tell you I got promoted to vice president at the bank? The whole family is here to celebrate." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't my celebration at all. The "you" in "will celebrate you" wasn't me. It was Melanie. They'd invited me early not for special family time, but to ensure I would arrive with a gift for my sister. Before I could process this revelation, Melanie grabbed my arm. "Come on, everyone's inside already." She pulled me through the double doors into Giovanni's grand ballroom, which had been transformed for the occasion. Round tables draped in white linen surrounded a small dance floor. A banner hung across the far wall. "Congratulations, Melanie." Floral centerpieces in the bank's corporate colors adorned each table. And the room was filled with people, at least 60 of them, including extended family I hadn't seen in years. I spotted my parents at the head table. My mother was laughing with my Aunt Linda, while my father was engaged in conversation with my brother Jason and our cousin Patrick. None of them noticed my entrance. Melanie immediately abandoned me to join a group of well-dressed people I assumed were her colleagues. I stood frozen just inside the doorway, the name tag burning in my hand like a brand of shame. Finally, my mother looked up and saw me. Instead of welcoming me or showing any sign of guilt, she simply laughed. A loud, genuine laugh that cut through the ambient noise of the ballroom and drew several pairs of eyes in my direction. My father followed her gaze and gave me an awkward half-wave before quickly returning to his conversation. No greeting, no explanation, no acknowledgement of the deception. I felt heat rising to my face as I realized how completely I'd been played. I'd canceled meetings, bought a new dress, and rushed across town because I thought finally my family wanted to celebrate me. Instead, I was standing alone at my sister's promotion party with a badge that literally marked me as unworthy of even being fed. "Tanya, I didn't expect to see you here," said my grandmother Margaret as she approached. "You look lovely, dear, though I wish someone had told me you were coming. The seating arrangements are quite specific." "Dad invited me," I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "He texted that they wanted to celebrate me." Grandmother Margaret looked confused. "Well, we are celebrating family success, I suppose. Your sister is the first executive in the family. Isn't it wonderful?" First executive, I'd been a vice president for over a year already. Had my parents never mentioned my promotion to the family? As I stood there processing this new layer of betrayal, various relatives approached with similar comments. "Oh, Tanya, what a surprise. We didn't know you were coming. Isn't it amazing about Melanie?" Each interaction twisted the knife deeper. I watched as waiters began serving appetizers, deliberately skipping me as they worked their way around the room. My cousin Sarah noticed and gave me a puzzled look, but said nothing. I felt simultaneously invisible and conspicuous, like a ghost everyone could see but chose to ignore. The shock was giving way to something deeper and more painful. This wasn't a misunderstanding or oversight. It was a deliberate humiliation orchestrated by the people who were supposed to love me most. I found an empty chair at a table near the back of the room, far from my family, but close enough to observe the celebration unfold. From this vantage point, I could see my sister Melanie holding court at the center table, surrounded by admirers. My parents beamed at her side pride, radiating from their faces, like I'd never seen directed at me. The first course was served a caprese salad with buffalo mozzarella that looked delicious. The waiter carefully avoided eye contact as he bypassed my place setting. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since a hasty lunch at my desk. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced a man in a banking executive's suit, "we're here tonight to celebrate an extraordinary achievement. Melanie Stevens has become the youngest vice president in First National Bank's history." Applause erupted around the room. My father stood up, raising his wine glass. "As her father, I can't express how proud we are. Melanie has always been exceptional, and now she's the first in our family to reach such an executive position." To Melanie. To Melanie echoed around the room as glasses clinked. First in the family. The words hit me like a physical blow. I had reached the exact same professional level over a year ago. I'd called my parents the day of my promotion, barely containing my excitement. Mom had answered, listened, for approximately 30 seconds, then said, "That's wonderful, honey. Listen, can you talk to your father about this month's mortgage payment? We're running a little behind." When I'd suggested having a small dinner to celebrate my promotion, they'd begged off, citing my father's back pain. I ended up marking the occasion with a glass of wine alone in my apartment after transferring money for their mortgage. Now I watched as waiters served the main course, a choice of roasted salmon or filet mignon. The aromas wafted toward me, intensifying my hunger and humiliation. I noticed Jason watching me from the family table, a troubled expression on his face. He started to stand plate in hand, but our mother placed a firm hand on his arm and whispered something that made him sit back down. "Tanya, why aren't you eating?" My Aunt Karen appeared beside me, plate heaped with salmon and roasted vegetables. "I wasn't included in the dinner arrangements," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "But your family, that's ridiculous." "Apparently, I'm a limited guest," I explained, showing her my name tag. "According to Melanie, that means no food." Aunt Karen frowned. "Let me talk to your mother." I watched as she approached my mother, gesturing in my direction. Mom smiled that dismissive smile I knew so well and said something that made Aunt Karen's eyebrows rise. My aunt returned, looking uncomfortable. "Your mother says they didn't budget for extra guests," she reported, clearly embarrassed. "She said you understand because you help with their finances." The irony was so bitter I almost laughed. I helped with their finances by paying their mortgage, covering Jason's tuition, and lending them money whenever they asked. Now they couldn't spare the cost of one additional dinner to feed their own daughter. "Would you like some of mine?" Aunt Karen offered, pushing her plate toward me. "No, thank you. I'm fine." Pride was all I had left at this point. The true purpose of my invitation became clear when Melanie began opening gifts at a special table set up for the occasion. My mother scanned the room, spotted me, and made a beeline in my direction. "Tanya, did you bring something for your sister's special day?" she asked. No greeting, no acknowledgement of the situation. I had in fact brought a gift, though not for Melanie. I'd purchased an expensive crystal frame for my parents as a thank you for what I thought was going to be my celebration. The irony was almost too much to bear. "No, Mom, I didn't bring a gift for Melanie. I wasn't told this was her promotion party." Mom's face hardened. "Your father specifically told you we were celebrating. Who did you think we meant?" "He said you were celebrating me, Mom. That's what his text said." "Well, you're part of the family, so, of course, we're celebrating you too, in a way." She waved her hand dismissively. "Anyway, you can send something later. Melanie has been looking at that silver bracelet from Tiffany's." As she walked away, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about tonight. This was about a lifetime of being used, overlooked, and taken for granted. I thought about the thousands of dollars I'd given them over the years. $20,000 for Jason's first year of college, when they claimed they couldn't afford it after buying a new boat. $15,000 for my father's back surgery, when their insurance wouldn't cover the specialist he wanted. $12,000 for my mother's new car, after hers was totaled in an accident, and she didn't want to downgrade to a more affordable model. And most significantly, over $70,000 in mortgage payments over the past 3 years, preventing them from losing their house after my father was downsized from his executive position. All that financial support given freely because they were family, and they couldn't even acknowledge my professional achievements or include me in a dinner they'd explicitly invited me to. I remembered my last therapy session with Dr. Patricia. Financial support without reciprocal emotional support isn't a healthy relationship, she'd told me. It's exploitation. At the time, I'd defended my family. They just show love differently, I'd said. They need my help. Dr. Patricia had given me a long look. Need and exploitation often wear the same face, Tanya. The question is, do they value you or just what you provide? As I sat watching my family celebrate my sister for achieving the same professional milestone they'd ignored when I reached it, the answer became painfully clear. As the celebration continued around me, I sat alone at my table, invisible yet exposed. The dessert course arrived, an elaborate tiramisu with gold leaf decoration, served to everyone except me. I watched as my family laughed and enjoyed their sweet indulgence, the culmination of a meal I'd been deliberately excluded from. My mind traveled back through years of similar exclusions, each memory stacking atop the previous one, like bricks in a wall that had always separated me from genuine family connection. I remembered my college graduation where my parents arrived an hour late and left immediately after the ceremony because Melanie had a dance recital. I'd stood alone while other graduates took family photos, then drove myself to a solitary dinner. I recalled last Christmas when I'd spent weeks selecting thoughtful gifts for everyone, only to receive a generic scarf from the three of them collectively, still in the department store gift bag, with the receipt showing it was purchased on the way to our gathering. I thought about the day I closed my first major client contract worth $2 million to my firm. I'd called home bursting with pride, only to have my father cut me off mid-sentence to ask if I could co-sign for Jason's new apartment since his credit score was too low. Each memory sharpened my awareness of the pattern. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a utility valued only for what I could provide. Dr. Patricia's words from our recent sessions echoed in my mind. Healthy relationships are reciprocal. Both parties give and receive care, attention, and support. But their family, I had protested during our last session. Isn't family supposed to be unconditional? Unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional access to your resources, Tanya, she'd replied gently. Love without respect isn't really love at all. The lights in the ballroom dimmed slightly, and a spotlight illuminated the small stage area where Melanie now stood, microphone in hand. Her voice carried clearly through the professional sound system that had been set up for the occasion. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight to celebrate this milestone with me, she began, her smile radiant. This promotion represents years of hard work and dedication. The room burst into applause. I noticed my mother dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. I couldn't have done it without the support of my amazing family, Melanie continued. Mom and Dad, you've always believed in me and pushed me to reach higher. More applause. My father stood up and took a theatrical bow. And my brother Jason, who always makes me laugh when work gets stressful. Jason raised his glass in acknowledgement. I waited for my name, for some small recognition of my existence or contribution to the family. But Melanie moved on to thanking her colleagues and friends. I had been completely erased. After Melanie's speech, my father took the microphone. We have one more surprise for our extraordinary daughter, he announced, his voice thick with emotion. Your mother and I are so proud of your achievement that we want to help you look the part of an executive. He handed Melanie an envelope. She opened it and squealed with delight. A $5,000 shopping spree. Oh my God, thank you. $5,000. More than 3 times what they had asked me to contribute to their mortgage payment just last week. Money they supposedly didn't have. As Melanie hugged our parents, my mother caught my eye across the room. Instead of showing any discomfort or guilt, she actually waved me over with an impatient gesture. I approached the family table, where they were now gathered in a tight circle of celebration. "Tanya," my mother said without preamble, "we were thinking you could contribute to Melanie's gift as well. Maybe add another 1,000 for her to get those designer shoes she's been wanting. You can just transfer it to our account." That was the moment something broke inside me. Not with a crash or a scream, but with a quiet, final click like a door locking forever. I looked at my mother's expectant face, my father's distracted half-smile, Melanie's entitled expression, and Jason's uncomfortable avoidance of eye contact. I saw them clearly for perhaps the first time, not as the family I wished they were, but as the people they actually were. Without a word, I reached into my purse and took out my phone. The room seemed to fade around me as I opened my banking app and navigated to the scheduled payments section. There it was, tomorrow's automatic transfer of $2,300 to my parents' account for their monthly mortgage payment. With deliberate movements, I began typing a message to my assistant, "Cancel everything immediately." My fingers moved with calm precision across my phone screen as I completed the message to my assistant, "Amanda, cancel everything immediately. Stop all scheduled transfers to Stephen's family accounts. Contact our lawyer about removing my name from any co-signed loans. Priority level urgent." I pressed send and felt a strange lightness spread through me, as if I'd put down a heavy burden I'd been carrying for years. The phone vibrated almost instantly with Amanda's reply, confirming cancellation of all Stephen's family financial arrangements. Contacting legal team now. Are you okay? I didn't respond. Instead, I slipped my phone back into my purse and looked up at my family, still waiting for my answer about contributing to Melanie's gift. "No," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "No, what?" My mother's expression shifted from expectant to annoyed. "No, I won't be contributing to Melanie's gift. And no, I won't be making your mortgage payment tomorrow or ever again." A confused silence fell over our small circle. My father was the first to recover his face, attempting a placating smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Tanya, honey, let's not discuss financial matters here at your sister's celebration. We can talk about this tomorrow." "There's nothing to discuss," I replied, surprising myself with how steady my voice remained. "I've been supporting this family financially for years. I've paid your mortgage-funded Jason's education, covered unexpected expenses whenever you asked. And tonight you invited me to what I thought was a celebration for me, only to publicly humiliate me and ask for more money." My mother glanced around nervously at nearby tables. "You're being dramatic as usual, Tanya. Keep your voice down." "I'm not being dramatic. I'm finally being honest." I stood straighter, addressing all of them. "You didn't even tell the family about my promotion to vice president last year, did you? The same position Melanie just got. The position that gave me the income to support all of you." My father's face darkened. "That's enough, Tanya. This isn't the time or place." "When is the time, Dad?" "When you need your next mortgage payment. When Jason wants a new car. When Melanie needs designer shoes." My voice remained level, but I could feel years of suppressed emotion behind every word. "I've called and texted all of you about my accomplishments, my struggles, my life. None of you have time to listen, unless I'm offering financial help." Melanie rolled her eyes dramatically. "God, Tanya, why do you always have to make everything about you? This is my special day." Something about her entitlement, so naked and unapologetic, broke the last thread of my restraint. I turned to face the room at large, raising my voice just enough to be heard by the nearby tables. "Did you all know that I've been paying my parents' mortgage for the past 3 years? That I paid for Jason's college tuition? That I've given this family over $100,000 in financial support?" The conversations around us ceased abruptly, Aunt Karen's mouth fell open. Uncle Robert put down his dessert fork with a sharp clink against china. "That's not true," my mother hissed, her face flushing. "Tanya, stop this right now." "It is true, every word. And tonight they invited me here under false pretenses, gave me a badge that literally marked me as unworthy of being fed, and then asked me for more money. I felt tears threatening, but blinked them back. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry." My father grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in painfully. "You need to leave, now." I pulled my arm free and looked him directly in the eyes. "You're right. I do need to leave. And I should have done it years ago." With that, I turned and walked toward the exit, back straight, head high. The room had fallen into a stunned silence. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, but for once, I didn't care what anyone thought. As I reached the doors, I heard my grandmother, Margaret's voice, cut through the silence. "Frank, Diana," is what Tanya said. "True. Have you been taking money from her all this time?" I didn't stay to hear their response. I pushed through the doors and walked quickly down the corridor through the main restaurant and out into the cool evening air. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my car keys, but my mind was surprisingly clear. As I drove home, my phone began to vibrate continuously in my purse. I didn't need to look to know it was them suddenly desperate to reach me now that their financial support was in jeopardy. I turned the radio up louder to drown out the buzzing. By the time I reached my apartment, I had 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. I scrolled through them briefly. "Dad, call me immediately. We need to discuss this like adults. Mom, how could you embarrass us like that? Call us right now. Melanie, you completely ruined my special night. You're so selfish. Jason, hey, what's going on? Mom and Dad are freaking out. Aunt Karen, Tanya, I had no idea. Are you okay? Please call me." I silenced my phone and placed it on my kitchen counter. Then I kicked off my heels, poured myself a glass of the expensive Cabernet I'd been saving for a special occasion, and sat by my window, overlooking the Chicago skyline. For the first time in years, I felt no obligation to immediately respond to my family's demands. Their urgency was no longer my emergency. Their problems were no longer automatically my problems. The next morning, I met with my financial advisor, Michael, for an emergency Saturday appointment. I explained the situation and asked him to help me disentangle my finances from my family's. "The mortgage is the most straightforward," he explained after reviewing my accounts. "Since you're not on the loan, just the payment arrangement, we've already stopped that. The notice of payment failure will reach their mortgage company on Monday." "What about Jason's tuition?" I asked. "That's also been canceled, but since you paid for the current semester up front, he'll finish the term. No further payments will be processed." "And the loans I co-signed?" Michael's expression grew more serious. "That's more complicated. You're legally responsible for those unless we can get you removed as a co-signer, which typically requires the primary borrower to refinance on their own. Given what you've told me about their financial situation, that may be difficult. What's my total exposure?" "You co-signed Jason's car loan with about $12,000 remaining and your parents' home equity line of credit with a balance of approximately $35,000. I nodded, absorbing the information. "I want to be prepared for worst-case scenarios. If they default on everything, what am I looking at?" "Roughly $50,000. It's substantial, but given your income, not catastrophic. And we might be able to negotiate settlements if it comes to that." As I left Michael's office, my phone showed another 15 missed calls. I scrolled through the notifications and saw a text from Jason that made me pause. "Parents just got a mortgage notice. They're completely panicking. What's happening?" I didn't reply, but I knew the reality of the situation was beginning to hit home for them. The consequences they never thought would come had arrived, all because they pushed me too far. That afternoon, my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera to see Melanie standing in the hallway looking impatient and angry. For a moment, I considered ignoring her, but decided it was time to face this head-on. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. "What do you want, Melanie?" "What do I want?" she sputtered, pushing past me into my apartment. "I want you to fix this mess you've created. Mom and Dad are falling apart. The bank called about the mortgage. Jason's tuition payment got reversed. What the hell are you doing?" "I'm establishing boundaries," I replied calmly, closing the door. "Something I should have done years ago." "Boundaries? You're punishing us because your feelings got hurt at my party." Melanie paced my living room, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floors. "So I got a promotion, and they threw me a party. Get over it." "This isn't about your party, Melanie. It's about years of being used and taken for granted. It's about being treated like an ATM instead of a daughter and sister." "That's ridiculous. We're family." "Yes, we're family. Which is why it's so painful that none of you could be bothered to celebrate my achievements, acknowledge my contributions, or even include me in a family dinner." Melanie's expression shifted between anger and panic. "Look, I'm sorry about the dinner thing. Okay, that was Mom's idea, not mine. But you can't just cut everyone off financially. Dad says they might lose the house." "They won't lose the house if they sell it and buy something they can actually afford," I pointed out. "That's what most people do when they can't make their mortgage payments." "But they shouldn't have to do that. You make plenty of money. You can afford to help them." "I can afford it, but I choose not to continue enabling their financial irresponsibility and emotional neglect." Melanie's face contorted with frustration. "God, you're so selfish. What about Jason's education? Are you going to ruin his future because your feelings got hurt? Jason can apply for student loans like millions of other students, or take a semester off and work, or ask his incredibly supportive parents and favorite sister for help." I maintained eye contact, refusing to be manipulated. My money, my choice. Just like it was their choice to exclude and use me for years. Melanie's anger seemed to deflate slightly, replaced by calculation. I'd seen this expression before, when she was trying to figure out how to get her way. "What would it take to fix this? What do you want? An apology? A party of your own? Just tell me so we can get past this drama." "I want respect, Melanie. I want acknowledgement of my worth beyond my financial contributions. I want a real relationship, not a transactional one." I sighed, suddenly tired of the conversation. "But right now, I don't think any of you are capable of that." "So, that's it? You're just abandoning your family?" "I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just no longer available for exploitation. There's a difference." I walked to the door and opened it. "I think this conversation is over." Melanie stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. "You'll regret this, Tanya. When you need family, we won't be there for you." "You haven't been there for me for years," I replied quietly. "The only difference now is that I've stopped pretending otherwise." After she left, I sat in the sudden silence of my apartment, processing the confrontation. My phone vibrated with another text. This one from my father family meeting tomorrow at 3. "Your presence is required." I didn't respond, but I knew they were finally beginning to understand. The comfortable reality they had constructed at my expense was crumbling, and they had no idea how to rebuild it without me. 30 minutes after Melanie left my apartment, the calls and texts intensified to a fever pitch. I turned off my phone completely, needing space to process everything that had happened. The quiet of my apartment became a sanctuary the first time in years. I'd put my own peace ahead of my family's demands. The next morning, I turned my phone back on to find 47 missed calls and over 60 text messages. Most were from my parents and siblings, but several came from extended family members. Aunt Karen had called 5 times. Even my grandmother Margaret had texted something she rarely did. I opened her message first, Tanya dear. We need to talk. What you said at the party, is it true? Please call me when you can. While I wasn't ready to engage with my immediate family, I felt I owed my grandmother an explanation. I called her, and she answered on the first ring. Tanya, thank goodness. Are you all right? I'm okay, Grandma. Just establishing some long overdue boundaries. I had no idea you were supporting the family financially, she said, her voice gentle but concerned. Your parents always gave the impression that they were helping you with your career. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. They've been saying that I've been completely financially independent since college. And for the past 3 years, I've been paying their mortgage, among other things. I suspected something wasn't right, she sighed. The way they dismissed your achievements while celebrating Melanie's identical ones seemed strange. But I never imagined they were taking advantage of you to this extent. It took me too long to see it clearly, I admitted. What happened after you left the restaurant was quite something, Grandmother continued. Once the shock wore off, people started asking questions. Your father tried to dismiss your claims as exaggerations, but your cousin Patrick apparently works at the same bank that holds their mortgage, and he confirmed you've been making the payments. I didn't know Patrick was aware of that. He processed the payment setup originally, said he always thought it was odd, but assumed it was a temporary arrangement. She paused. Your parents left the party early. Melanie was furious. The whole celebration fell apart. After speaking with my grandmother, I checked my email and found a message from Amanda, my assistant, confirming that all financial arrangements with my family had been canceled as requested. She'd also scheduled a meeting with the company's legal team for Monday to discuss the co-signed loans. I spent the rest of the weekend in a strange state of calm productivity. I cleaned my apartment, thoroughly prepared meals for the upcoming week, and even started a painting project I'd been putting off. Each action felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, time, and energy that had previously been consumed by family drama. On Monday morning, I met with our company's legal counsel, Sarah Thompson. She reviewed my situation and outlined my options regarding the co-signed loans. The best-case scenario is that your brother and parents refinance these loans without you as a co-signer, she explained. If they refuse or can't qualify on their own, you may need to prepare to take over the payments to protect your credit. And if I end up responsible for these loans, do I have any recourse? You could sue for reimbursement, but that's a lengthy process with no guarantee of success, especially with family members. Often, the best approach is to negotiate a settlement. Armed with this information, I finally responded to my father's demand for a family meeting, suggesting we meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop near my office, on Wednesday afternoon. He replied immediately, insisting we meet at their house, but I held firm. Eventually, he agreed to my terms. On Wednesday, I arrived at the coffee shop 10 minutes early to find my entire immediate family already there, huddled around a table in the corner. My mother's eyes were red-rimmed, my father looked haggard, and even Melanie's perfect appearance seemed somewhat diminished. Jason sat slightly apart from them, fidgeting uncomfortably. I ordered a latte before joining them, a small act of self-care that felt significant. When I sat down, the tension was palpable. Thank you for finally responding to us, my father began, his tone attempting authority but undermined by the strain in his voice. We need to discuss what happened and how to move forward. I'm listening, I said, taking a sip of my latte. First of all, your behavior at Melanie's celebration was completely inappropriate, my mother started. You embarrassed us in front of our entire family and Melanie's colleagues. I remained silent, observing how quickly they defaulted to blame rather than reflection. However, my father interjected clearly. Having rehearsed this part, we recognize that there may have been some misunderstandings about our family dynamics and financial arrangements. Misunderstandings, I repeated, keeping my voice even. There's no misunderstanding. I've been financially supporting this family while being emotionally excluded from it. Those are facts, not misunderstandings. We've always appreciated your help, my mother insisted. We just don't make a big show of gratitude like some people need. This isn't about gratitude, Mom. It's about respect and recognition. It's about being treated like a valued member of the family, not just a convenient source of funds. My father leaned forward. Look, Tanya, we can discuss all that later. Right now, we have some urgent, practical matters to address. The mortgage company called yesterday. They're saying the payment is overdue. Yes, I canceled the automatic transfer. Well, you need to reinstate it immediately, he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. We don't have that kind of money available right now. That's not my problem anymore, I replied calmly. You'll need to figure out your finances without my input going forward. My mother's face flushed with anger. How can you be so cold? We're your parents. Yes, you are. And parents are supposed to support their children, not exploit them. We never exploited you, my father protested. We asked for help during difficult times and you offered. Dad, I've been paying your mortgage for 3 years. That's not difficult times. That's a lifestyle subsidy. Melanie, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. What about my tuition payment? It got reversed too. I think you mean Jason's tuition, I corrected. No, mine. Mom and Dad have been using some of the money you send them to help with my MBA program. This was news to me. I looked at my parents, who had the grace to look somewhat ashamed. You told me that money was for the mortgage, I said slowly. You've been lying about where the funds were going. We didn't lie, my mother said defensively. We just redistributed some of it. Family resources should help whoever needs it most, and Melanie needed help with her education. While you continuously told me how proud you were that she was paying her own way through her MBA program, I finished. Another lie. Jason, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. I had no idea you were paying my tuition, Tanya. Mom and Dad told me they had a special education fund set up for me. If I'd known it was coming from you, I would have thanked you. It's not your fault, Jason, I assured him. You weren't responsible for their deception. My father slammed his hand on the table, causing several nearby customers to look our way. Enough of this blame game. The bottom line is, we have financial obligations that are going unpaid, and you have the means to help. That's what family does. No, Dad, that's not what family does. Family supports each other emotionally as well as financially when needed. Family celebrates each other's achievements equally. Family doesn't invite one member to another's party with a badge that says, "No food for you," and then ask for money. We didn't create those badges, my mother insisted. That was the event planner's idea. But you approved them, I countered. And you deliberately misled me about the purpose of the dinner. The conversation continued in circles, with my parents alternating between blame justification and increasingly desperate appeals to family obligation. Melanie oscillated between anger and calculated attempts at reconciliation. Only Jason seemed to be genuinely processing the situation, asking thoughtful questions, and acknowledging his own unwitting role in the dynamic. After nearly 2 hours of this, I'd had enough. "Here's where we stand," I said firmly. "I will not be resuming financial support. You have three options for the mortgage: sell the house and downsize refinance to a payment you can afford, or find another source of income." "We can't just sell our home," my mother exclaimed. "People do it every day when they can't afford their mortgage," I replied. "As for the loans I co-signed, I've consulted with a lawyer. You have 60 days to refinance them without me as a co-signer, or I'll be forced to take legal action to protect myself." "You'd sue your own family?" my father asked incredulously. "I'd prefer not to, which is why I'm giving you time to make other arrangements." "And what about our relationship?" my mother asked. "Are you just cutting us off completely?" "That depends on you," I said honestly. "I'm open to building a healthier relationship based on mutual respect and genuine connection, but I won't return to the old dynamic under any circumstances." I stood up, gathering my purse and jacket. "Think about what kind of relationship you want with me going forward. If it's just about money, then we don't have anything more to discuss. If you're interested in something more meaningful, I'm willing to work on that, but it will take time and effort from all of us." As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. The family I had desperately wanted to please for so long had shown their true colors when the financial support was removed. Now it was up to them to decide if I was worth knowing for myself, not just for my checkbook. 3 months passed like a deep breath, slow and cleansing. The initial storm of family drama gradually settled into a new reality, one where I was no longer at the center of their financial universe, but increasingly at the center of my own life. The changes began small. I started attending a weekly painting class I'd always been too busy for. I joined a hiking group that explored trails outside the city on weekends. I reconnected with college friends I'd lost touch with during years of prioritizing family emergencies over my own social life. Dr. Patricia noted the changes in our weekly sessions. "You're sitting differently," she observed during one appointment. "More relaxed, more present." "I feel lighter," I admitted. "Sometimes I still feel guilty, but mostly I feel free." "Guilt is normal when we change long-established patterns," she assured me. "The question is whether that guilt is productive or just a habitual response to setting healthy boundaries." My family's response to their new financial reality unfolded in stages. The first month was a barrage of guilt trips, manipulative messages, and outright anger. My father left voicemails about potentially losing their home. My mother sent texts detailing how they were struggling to buy groceries. Melanie alternated between rage and bargaining, offering superficial apologies, followed by specific requests for money. I maintained my boundaries throughout, responding with calm clarity. "I understand this is difficult. I'm here to talk, but not to provide financial support." By the second month, reality began to set in for them. My parents listed their house for sale, a 5-bedroom suburban home they'd purchased during more prosperous times. They found a smaller 3-bedroom townhouse closer to my father's work, significantly reducing both their mortgage payment and his commuting costs. Jason took a semester off from his graduate program, found a part-time job at a local tech startup, and applied for student loans to cover his remaining education. During this period, he reached out to me regularly, not for money, but for genuine connection. "I never realized how much you were carrying for all of us," he said during one of our coffee meetups. "I feel awful that I didn't see it." "You weren't meant to see it," I told him. "Mom and Dad created a narrative that suited their needs, and we all played our assigned roles. Still, I should have questioned things more, especially when they constantly dismissed your achievements while celebrating the same ones for Melanie and me." Jason's willingness to acknowledge the dysfunctional patterns gave me hope that at least one family relationship might be salvageable. We began a new tradition of meeting weekly, sometimes just to chat, other times to discuss more profound topics like our upbringing and its impact on our adult lives. Melanie's journey was more complicated. Her initial fury gradually gave way to a grudging reassessment when she learned that our parents had been using my money to partially fund her MBA while claiming she was paying for it herself. This revelation shook her image of herself as the self-sufficient golden child. "I would have thanked you if I'd known," she told me during a tense but honest phone call. "I'm not a monster, Tanya." "I don't think you're a monster," I replied. "I think you benefited from a system that was designed to elevate you while diminishing me. Whether you actively participated in creating that system is a separate question." My parents' journey toward understanding was the slowest and most uncertain. The sale of their house and move to a more modest home forced them to confront financial realities they'd been avoiding for years. My father took on consulting work to supplement his income. My mother, who hadn't worked outside the home in decades, found a part-time position at a local boutique. Their initial communications with me were entirely focused on money and logistics. It took nearly 2 months before my mother called with a different approach. "Tanya," she began hesitantly, "I've been thinking about what you said about wanting respect and recognition. I realize now we didn't celebrate your promotion last year the way we should have. It wasn't a complete acknowledgement of the pattern, but it was a start. Thank you for recognizing that, Mom. Your father and I would like to have you over for dinner at the new house. Just to talk, no financial discussions. Would you consider it?" I agreed to a Sunday lunch, approaching it with cautious optimism but clear boundaries. The townhouse they'd purchased was modest, but well-maintained, a significant downsize from their previous home, but perfectly adequate for their needs. The conversation was awkward at first, punctuated by long silences and careful navigation around sensitive topics. But gradually something shifted. Without the financial dynamic dominating our interaction, we began finding our way toward a different kind of relationship. "We've been seeing a financial counselor," my father informed me over dessert. "She's helping us create a realistic budget based on our actual income." "That's a positive step," I acknowledged. "She said something that really hit home," he continued, looking uncomfortable but determined. "She said that we'd been using you as a financial crutch instead of adapting to our changed circumstances after my job loss. She called it strategic helplessness." My mother nodded slowly. "We've had to face some hard truths about ourselves, Tanya. I won't pretend we've figured everything out, but we're trying to understand how we ended up treating you the way we did. It wasn't a complete transformation, and I harbored no illusions that decades of dysfunctional patterns would disappear overnight. But it was an opening a crack in the foundation of denial that had characterized our relationship for so long." Over the following weeks, I established new terms for family interaction. We would meet in neutral locations, keep discussions balanced between all family members, and immediately address any reversion to old patterns. I made it clear that financial support was off the table, indefinitely removing that expectation from our dynamic. 6 months after the fateful dinner at Giovanni's, we attempted our first family gathering since that night. A simple barbecue at a local park, with each person bringing something to share. The conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years, perhaps because the underlying current of financial exploitation had been removed. Jason brought his new girlfriend, a doctoral student in psychology, who seemed to bring out a more confident side of him. Melanie came alone, more subdued than her usual self, but making visible efforts to engage with me as an equal rather than a competitor. My parents maintained a careful cordiality, occasionally slipping into old habits, but catching themselves more quickly than before. As we packed up at the end of the day, My mother approached me privately. This was nice, wasn't it? Different, but nice. It was, I agreed. It felt more authentic. I want you to know something, Tanya, she said, her voice softening. I'm proud of you, not just for your career success, but for having the courage to stand up for yourself even when it was difficult for the rest of us to hear. The words I'd longed to hear for years washed over me, but I noticed they didn't carry the weight they once would have. I'd learned that my value didn't depend on their recognition, that I could be whole and worthy without their validation. Thank you for saying that, Mom. I appreciate it. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The family I had now wasn't the perfect, loving unit I'd once desperately wanted. It was imperfect, struggling, and still learning how to interact in healthier ways. But it was real based on who we actually were, rather than the roles we'd been assigned. More importantly, I discovered that family isn't just the one you're born into, but also the one you create. My circle of friends had expanded. I'd formed genuine connections with colleagues. I'd even started dating again, meeting a kind, attentive man who showed interest in my thoughts and feelings without any ulterior motives. The truth I'd learned through this painful process was that self-respect must come before any healthy relationship can form. By refusing to participate in my own diminishment, I'd opened the door to authentic connections based on mutual care and respect. Standing up for yourself doesn't mean losing everyone you love. Sometimes it means creating the conditions where real love can finally exist. And sometimes it means discovering that your worth isn't determined by those who failed to see it, but by your courage to honor it regardless. What about you? Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with loved ones? How did you balance self-care with family obligations? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Your support helps me continue sharing these journeys of healing and self-discovery. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do for others and yourself is to say no when necessary.